getting this disease.
Given the numbers 50-50, I would strongly suggest the same thing. But how does the disease come about from the so first you have the ordinary symptoms of novel coronavirus or COVID-19, and then it becomes ARDS. What happens? How does it go from one to the other?
The virus infects the lung tissue.
The virus infects the lung tissue. Okay.
And specifically, there's cells inside the lungs that make mucus and help clear debris called so there are two types of cells, cilia and goblet cells, and that's too technical. But what happens is it begins to wage war on that tissue, and it's a race for time, because if there's a certain amount of damage, a certain threshold of damage, think of it as a battlefield with dead corpses and bodies lying all over the place, and that biological debris begins to clog up the tissue and the functioning aspects of the lungs. It's like pouring cement into the lungs.
So there is, in everyone's lungs, there are cells that protect the lungs by cleaning up debris, right?
Yeah, can you see me? I want to show you something.
Yes, I can see you.
Can you see this picture?
Yes, I can see the picture.
So this is a person, this is the lungs. And if you take a microscope or look really closely, this is what you see. And these cilia, they help clear mucus and phlegm and all that stuff. And these cells, the goblet cells, make the mucus. And this protects the lungs.
Now, so that's a healthy process. The goblet cells make the mucus. The other cells clean out the mucus.
And the mucus traps all the bacteria.
So when we think of mucus as being bad, it's actually in many cases good.
Right. It clears the lung from debris.
And that's a normal process for the lung.
Correct.
Now, what happens when COVID-19 is introduced into this?
Think of napalm or carpet bombing that tissue. That's exactly what it is.
So it enters the lung.
It enters those cells.
And the cells and the COVID go to war.
It's actually different. The virus, the way viruses work, they grow by stealing your resources. They're real parasites. They go inside the cell, hijack the machinery and the industry of the cell, and use it to replicate.
So they get in the lungs, they attack these cells, right?
They go into the cell.
Actually go into the cell, and they try to destroy it
by using its resources and growing.
Okay, but they turn it now into a dangerous cell.
Right, and it dies. It kills the cell, and if you multiply that by a few trillion, what happens is there's debris, corpse, dead bodies, so to speak, dead biological tissue that gets shed down instead of up.
We got you.
And what?
I said I got it. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting.
Pouring cement into the lungs.
Pouring cement into the lungs. So now, what would fight that off?
So a person has an immune system that's a gift from God that is designed to push away external threats.
Right.
So that's why in most cases, people will recover because their immune systems are able to overcome the viral infection before the viral infection kills the lung.
So once you get to the stage, though, of being in the ICU and being intubated, so this battle is going on, what you're telling me is you win that only about 50% of the times.
Yeah, and even then you're scarred for life.
So no matter what, you're going to be left with very, very weakened lungs.
Correct.
Damaged lungs.
Correct.
What percentage of your cases that you treated with hydroxy and let's call it Z-Pak, what percentage of your patients ended up in that condition?
0.
How many patients have you treated so far?
Hundreds.
Hundreds? Can you make it 200s, 300s, 400s?
By now, it's closer to 500 to 600. I lost count.
500 to 600 patients. Were you originally testing them?
I was
And what kind of rate of positive were you coming up with?
59%.
59%. So then you switched to you were going to treat the symptoms irregardless of what the test said. Is that
Well,
right?
the problem was the test took 3 days to get back.
And that could be particularly for a very very difficult case. That could be a critical 3 days, right?
Yeah, that's the main point. That we need to hit hard. We need to hit this infection hard and early.
That the earlier you hit it, the better the success, even for a
Sure.
compromised person.
Especially in a compromised person.
My understanding is that a compromised person, it comes on faster and stronger.
Right.
So that first 2 or 3 days is much more critical for let's say an elderly person or an immunocompromised person. Is that right?
That's very right. Let me explain. There's a high risk group. The high risk group, statistically, are patients above the age of 60, patients that have chronic medical conditions and or are immunosuppressed. There's a, depending on which country you look at, there's between a 6 to 10% death rate.
Among that group.
Correct.
So when did you first begin the hydroxy Z-Pak therapy? And how much hydroxy do you give them and how much Z-Pak?
So no, first what I did was, I did two things. I blended the two treatments from South Korea and France. I made a 3-drug regimen.
Okay, and what was that?
Hydroxychloroquine, which was the common denominator by both treatments. Then I used zinc, and then I used azithromycin.
Azithromycin?
Yeah, you know that azithromax or Z-Pak.
Yeah. So you basically were taking all three that had been used and
Yes.
and putting them together. So how much what milligrams of hydroxy?
I'll tell you my protocol in a minute, but would you be interested for the rationale behind the treatment?
Oh, of course I would.
So it's well known that zinc.
Doctor, I have to say, you should be a professor. You're a very good teacher. Obviously, you're a good doctor, but you're explaining this in a way in which I have to say, with all due respect, very few doctors could explain it as clearly as you are.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Mayor.
that's one of your gifts. You should know that, and thank you.
Thank you. I really, the truth is, I could have been a professor, but I really enjoy being on the front lines and clinical medicine.
I can see that. I can see that. So tell me the rationale for the hydroxy, the zinc, and the erythromycin.
Okay, so like we said before, the virus gets inside the cell and begins to hijack the cell's industrial complex. You know, its machinery. It's well known that zinc interrupts that.
Okay.
You probably heard of people who have colds. They take zinc.
I have. Recently, I had a cold. I mean, like 3 months ago, and for the first time, I took zinc, and I found it very helpful.
Right. So the concept is that it interferes. It throws a monkey wrench into the replication of the virus.
Okay.
So, but the problem with zinc is that it does not get inside the cell very easily because there's a biochemical reason for it. Not that important right now, but
So it has a hard time getting in. If you just take the zinc, only some of it is going to get in, not all of it, right?
a very small percentage.
Very small percentage. Okay.
Now, what's interesting is hydroxychloroquine is a ionophore. That's a fancy word for a channel, a canal that opens the door and allows the zinc to go from outside the cell to inside the cell.
So it opens the door for itself, and in doing that, the zinc can come in also.
No, it is the canal.
It is the canal.
It's the key that opens the canal. Think of the Panama Canal, and you have
But
to open
it's also its own medicine, right?
yeah, but that's how it works.
Yes, I got it. Okay, so it opens the canal, and then the zinc, then that facilitates the zinc coming in.
Right.
So then you get the real benefit of the zinc.
Right.
Wow.
That's
Well, how did you
yeah.
figure that out?
I did the research. I looked at the studies. I was curious how things work. I'm like, I like to put puzzles together. So,
Oh, God bless you. And then, so now tell me the theory of the erythromycin, the Z-Pak.
well, we don't know, but I have my theory, which is that when you have a severe viral infections, it's well known that you can get a secondary bacterial secondary infection. So I believe the Zithromax is there as a precaution, and if there begins a bacterial process, it kills it before it causes a bigger problem.
But it doesn't actually specifically deal with the COVID-19.
Not enough data to answer that.
But it could. It could.
I don't think so, but
Oh, you don't think so? I mean, some doctors have thought that
it's
it.
an antibiotic in concept.
I
So,
know, and it would not make sense, but
but we don't know. But it seems to work. So as long as it works, that's all I care about for now.
okay. So now, how? Just give us a sort of